The unpalatable truth is there's no such thing as character. It just doesn't exist. Where is it? Where is it? Here, go through the thing. I'm gonna shake out. All there is the things that people say. Why do they say them? In order to get something from each other.
That was David Mamet, playwright, novelist, screenwriter, and director of both screen and stage. His resume is unimpeachable. He's the author of such works as Glengarry Glen Ross, for which he won the Pulitzer Prize in 1984.
What a big man you are!
The Verdict, The Untouchables,
I want him dead!
And my personal favourite, The Edge. His laconic style of dialogue has even earned its own moniker, dubbed Mamet Speak.
What's your name?
Fuck you! That's my name!
He is a bona fide writing legend of the latter half of the 20th century. And, fortunately for us, a few years ago he condensed some of his wisdom into a masterclass. And even better, it's actually really good. Mamet's masterclass isn't just entertaining, as he weaves old jokes and stories through his teachings.
And the greatest social philosophy of all time was, of course, the Roadrunner.
On completing the masterclass, I felt equipped with a whole new set of practical tips, tricks, knowledge, and techniques. Not only that, but I felt confident that I could clearly apply these lessons to my writing. One such lesson is that which opened this video, that character doesn't exist. It sounds silly at first, but when you think about it, Mamet is probably right. So what does he mean? He doesn't mean that there are no characters in a story, but rather that, in any piece of writing, what we think of as character doesn't exist in any tangible form. Rather, it is a byproduct of the script's content. All we have is a name, a description of what they do, and perhaps what they think if it's a novel, and a transcript of the things they say. We must extrapolate character from these things.
The question is, what is character? And Aristotle says character is just habitual action. There is no more to a character other than what we see them do. That's it.
In other words, characterization comes from action. We learn about who a character is through the things they do, not the things we are told about them. For instance, one might say of Michael Corleone that he's smart, ruthless, that he goes from an upstanding citizen to a crooked mafia boss. But of course, there's no line in The Godfather that tells you as much. Our impression of Michael Corleone, of any character, comes not from the things we are told, but from the things we see them do. His intelligence is shown to us, his ruthlessness demonstrated by the killings of McCluskey and Sollozzo, his transformation into underworld boss revealed by his meticulously planned assassinations of the 5 families. What we call character is an abstraction that we try to capture and explain, the resulting impression we get from observing the actions undertaken by someone in a story. It is not unlike cinema. Movement doesn't really exist, but the impression of movement is created between still images, filled in by our mind. This doesn't mean that characters are best defined by car chases or fight scenes, or that action films boast necessarily great characters.
I don't have friends. I got family.
Nor does it mean that dialogue isn't an important part of characterization, and that we should return to the era of silent films. Many actions require speech.
Get out of here, Duffy, I'm busy!
Actions are just the things a character does. Any verb you or I can do is an action that a character can do. These actions have meaning within a greater context. They are directed toward a goal, and they are meaningful in relation to the other actions a character takes. We begin to understand who a character is by the actions they choose to take in a given scenario. Characterization is the process of stacking a series of connected actions on top of one another. The actions a character takes over the course of a narrative define who they are. Our understanding of a character is not set in stone. It evolves over time in accordance with the things they do.
Suck on this.
Let's look at a couple of case studies. Spoilers ahead. Take Glengarry Glen Ross, the film not the play, and the case of Shelley Levine, played by perhaps my favourite actor and Hollywood's greatest common man, Jack Lemmon. Mamet tells us the bare minimum that we need to know and shows us the rest. There's a sales contest and Levine is in last place, so he'll be fired unless he can make a sale tonight. His daughter is sick, so presumably he has medical bills to pay as well. He's extra desperate. Levine spends the film lying to pretty much everyone, over the phone or in person, telling them that he's a high-powered executive in town for one night, that they've won a contest. He tries to bribe Williamson for good leads, but can't even afford his own bribe. When he has no other option, he robs the office, but his own big mouth gives him away. Williamson busts him, and Levine promptly confesses, throws his co-conspirator under the bus, and begs for mercy, which he doesn't get. It's not an action-heavy film, given that it's adapted from a stage play, but the few things Levine does create such a strong impression of a desperate, dishonest, bullshitting salesman that we know exactly who he is by the end. Or take The Edge, and the character of Charles Morse played by Anthony Hopkins. Again, Mamet tells us the bare minimum and shows us everything else. Morse is a billionaire, he's married to a supermodel, he reads a lot and retains almost everything, he's a fount of trivia. But he shows us Morse always watching his wife, even when he looks like he's buried in a book. He's jealous, even suspicious of her relationship with photographer Bob, played by crackshot Alec Baldwin. When their plane crashes, Morse is the only one to keep his head. He has the presence of mind, even while submerged in water, to cut that annoying guy from Lost out of his seatbelt. He makes a fire, he makes a compass so they can navigate. He quickly makes a bridge so they can escape the bear. He constructs a trap so they can hunt squirrels, and uses the gold from his watch to fish. He comes up with a way to kill the bear, motivates Bob to help him, then he actually kills the bear. Finally, he stays cool even at gunpoint, tricking Bob into falling down a pitfall trap. All that Morse does paints a picture of an incredibly resourceful and determined man, even though all of the odds for survival are stacked against him. He's also lonely, keeping Bob alive because he needs a friend. How about a couple of non-Mamet films? In Drive, Ryan Gosling doesn't say much, so we really have to get to know him through the things he does. He volunteers to be the getaway driver for a pawnshop robbery without being paid, so that he can protect Benicio and Irene. He's sweet and even romantic, but we also see his capacity for violence, in the lift and at the motel. He wants to return the money, he's not interested in it, and he kills not for revenge, but to make sure Benicio and Irene will be safe. He takes out Albert Brooks, who's the only other person who knows about them, and it probably costs him his life. Or look conversely at a film with plenty of dialogue, The Social Network. We're told a lot about Zuckerberg, but we really get to know him from everything we see him do, starting in his dorm room all the way to the deposition room. He made Face Mash, he said things in his blog, he screwed his only friend out of the company, he's petulant in depositions and corporate interviews, and after all of his success, he's alone, hitting refresh to see if his friend request was accepted. We've all been down the road of soliciting writing advice from blog posts, articles, videos, books, in those moments when we're stuck, or just looking for a way to get rolling. Often you'll run into advice on character development that tells you to dive into your character's past, to flesh out their backstory. You should write an entry in their diary, make a playlist of their favourite breakup songs, outline all of the major events in their life from the moment they were conceived until 50 years after they're dead. At best, these kind of activities are creative exercises that might lead to something fruitful down the road, but probably nothing tangible today. At worst, it's the most destructive kind of procrastination because it feels like work.
For me, anyway, to sit down and say what kind of shoes he wore, it might be a good way to pass the time so that I don't have to actually write the silly thing.
It's essential to bear in mind those things that will actually have an impact on the reader, viewer, or audience. So when you develop a character and you have an idea of the qualities you think they should possess, how they will change over the course of your story, the way that you communicate these qualities is through the things your character does, not by simply describing those qualities or by having another character do your dirty work for you. It's the old adage of show don't tell applied to character.
What we got here is a little game of show and tell. You don't want to show me nothing, but you're telling me everything.
Thinking about characters in terms of action will help them become more concrete. Rather than thinking of them in the abstract as kind or cruel or mischievous, you will have pieces of action to hold on to, real tangible things they do that will illustrate to you and your audience who they are. Mamet's advice is so useful, so valuable, because it transcends the dimension of character alone. Such a focus on action naturally ties in character more closely with plot. The plot is just a series of incidents, of all the actions, so is character. Approaching character in this way will help you develop stronger plots that are driven by active characters. Fundamentally, this is valuable advice because it forces you to become a more active writer, more intentional, more thoughtful. Writing undoubtedly requires some talent, but the work that you put in really matters. Drifting through any part of the process will only get you so far. Like your characters, you must take action to get what you want. It sounds deceptively simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. The good news is that when you get stuck, as you inevitably will, the path out is clear. You can almost always just ask yourself, what would I do in this situation? Plus, action only covers the what. That's the comparatively easy part. You still have to figure out the how. But that will have to wait for another day.